You mentioned that the labour market is tight, Brian, and certainly a tight labour market is something that's been experienced pretty much all around the world. When would you expect, with the relaxation of, borders and travel, when would you expect that labour market to finally ease up a little?
We think it's more likely that we see a bit more of a significant easing probably in the second half, the later half of this year. Yes, the borders have reopened, and one of the big constraints on labor supply in Singapore is the fact that we do rely quite heavily on foreign labor, and some of that has been constrained because of difficulties coming into the island. With the border restrictions being eased, we should see more of those come in. But I would caution, point out a bit of, some cause for caution here, because in the fourth quarter, we did see some of that labor supply come back. But the increase in labor supply was not able to keep up with the increase in labor demand. And so we actually saw the labor market conditions tighten up even further, job vacancy rates going up even further in the fourth quarter of last year. So in the short term, we're staying quite cautious. We're not sure if it's going to be enough to alleviate the labor shortages just yet, but probably in the second half, more likely towards the end of this year.
And what about tourism? When would you expect for pre-pandemic levels of tourism to return to Singapore, and what kind of contribution will that make to the economy?
So, the Minister of Transport had said yesterday that we're seeing about 18% of pre-COVID passenger traffic at the airport as of last week. I think the airport group is targeting 50% this year. I do think that it will be quite gradual. We are probably only going to see a full return to pre-COVID travel probably towards the later part of next year, or even into early 2024 if things get really tricky. But I would say two things. One is that the tourism contribution, the travel contribution to Singapore's GDP is quite large. It's about 4% of GDP. And so that, to the extent that even if we can get 20% of that back, that's quite a big contributor to the headline GDP numbers. The second thing is that, regardless of whether or how quickly the tourism numbers pick up, the rest of the economy is actually performing quite fine. We seem to have been able to return to above pre-COVID levels of GDP, even without a resumption of tourism. And it looks like the economy and labor market is carrying on just fine. So, tourism, it's great if it comes back in a big way, but even if it's gradual, I think we'll be okay.